Okay, so it started. Let me maximize the. Uh, so I'm on the syllabus because I wanted to mention one thing. We still got, what do we got, 5, 6 weeks left? It's about half the quarter anyway. The part I wanted to mention is the part in all caps here. And I'll mention it a couple of times. I'm pretty loose on when things come in, and I will remain so. But uh, the last day of the quarter is the 14th. That evening, I'm headed to Chicago on an Amtrak, and I probably won't have Wi-Fi. If you don't pay for, if you're riding in coach, they don't give you Wi-Fi. If you get a room or do different things, you do get Wi-Fi. There is Wi-Fi in the viewing car, so maybe. But I just can't promise to grade anything after that day because I don't know. It's like a 48-hour train trip, and then there probably will be Wi-Fi at the hotel. But so I just wanted to warn you because usually I let people turn things in until like the couple of days into the week after the quarter. So that's just a warning. Okay, try to get it all in beforehand. It is possible, but you're taking a risk that I will get enough Wi-Fi to do a little bit of grading after that time, or before the grades are due. But I can't promise it. So if you turn things in after that, they may not get counted. That was one thing I wanted to show.
What's the last day of the quarter?
That day. So we don't meet on Fridays, but Friday the 14th is the last day of the quarter. And I will be here in the morning. The train doesn't leave until fairly late in the afternoon. So if you did turn it in that morning, I should be able to look at it. But sooner better, And I try to help you, particularly when we get working on the project, it'll be all open lab pretty much. So there should be time. If you're a little behind, that's a good time to catch up too. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there is a midterm which you can do at any time. It's online. Like my typical tests, it's multiple choice, 3 tries. So there's 4 possible answers, there's 3 tries. And I think it tells you when you get the wrong answer what the right answer is. So it's really just meant to reinforce some of the ideas. Some of the terms, some of that. So it's there. There is a final which you can't see. Right now, there's nothing in it. If I manage to write it, I will make it public. But it'll be the same kind of thing. Just multiple choice, 3 times through. You really can't you really can't do poorly on it unless you just don't try, I guess, because it gives you the answers ultimately. Questions on those? So where we are now, we've got tests, we've got forms, a little bit, and we're a little bit ahead. Well, I said this is due May 9th, which is Thursday. Okay. Again, the dates don't matter much, but we're about on schedule with these. When we get to the project, as I said, it'll be pretty much open lab at that point. So we've only got a few of these to go. Some of these, this one is one of the harder ones. This one's pretty easy. This one's really easy, although it sounds hard. And then there's a few more tests. It's not as hard as this because there's fewer tests. And it's not bad. And I'm also real loose on grading the tests. So we don't have a lot. If you're feeling really panicked, even if you're behind, I think there's time to catch up, right? I can build this whole Python club in about an hour, but that's because I've done it many times. So I mean, just in terms of real time, in terms of doing it, learning that takes longer, obviously. Okay, so we're going to look at tests, and I'll look at the assignment real quick, and then we'll load the. So it's basically to create a test for on the models and then also on our views. And testing is, have any of you ever done any kind of unit testing in other classes? You have? It's really an important part of programming. If you actually go out and are working on a job, they're going to require that you write tests. The tests are how they validate that your software is working, basically. And writing the test is just as important a part as writing the software, basically. And you'll test it, and at the end, what you want is to be able to go through a long list of tests and have them all clear, right? They all work. So we're going to do some tests. I also want it with each of these, there is a link to the blog where it will walk through and give you basically what we're going to do in class. A couple of caveats is that I don't necessarily refer to this when I'm doing the class, so I don't name things the same always. But basically, we're going to do the same kinds of things. So it has the code there, and it has the explanation. So along with the video of what we do in class, I just encourage you to look at these. These actually give you a pretty step-by-step view through all of it. And there's one for pretty much everything we've done. So if I go down to the very first one, we've got this one doesn't have installations and setup because that's what this page is. And then we've got creating the first view, adding a model, create a view that displays data, viewing details, and then tests. And then it also has the forms and form tests and the authentication. So it has, and I will try to add the extras. I know it's going there, I just haven't written it yet. The extras, again, are extra. They're not part of any assignment. So there's all of this here as well as the videos. Okay. Plus, there is, and you can get to this too if I go back to here, if we go to pages. There are lots of these, and when we do tutorials and reference, that whole, this is the tech review proj, that brings you back to the, so in the pages, there are lots of different things here, including the Django Girls tutorial, which is pretty good. The Django book, which is a little out of date. I wrote a project manager. These are different versions of the tech reviews that I've done in class. I wrote a reading app, and then I was working, this one I haven't finished yet, but they all have sample code that you can use, and they're all in GitHub. So I just want to remind you of all of that, so I'm trying to quell any mid-quarter panic. Questions on any of that before? Because I think people forget that pages exist. And in the pages, as I said, I tried to give as much reference. There's the base HTML file. This talks about projects. This gives you a link to GitHub. And there's a blog entry on GitHub that talks about how to set things up. Now, it's really, for us, GitHub is fairly simple, as you know, just drag the folder in. I mean, if you want to do a command line, if you want to do it with something else, you can. Yeah.
Just one question. I apologize for being late.
That's all right.
The group assignment, what's the group requirement and how are groups being formed?
Oh, so on the project, yep. Let's see if I can get to the, did I lose my assignment? Let's go back to, so the groups are optional first. So let's just go back to assignments. So the final project, I did arrange groups. So basically what happens when it's a group assignment, you can join a group, and I'm going to let self join. So there will be in people. Let's just go to people real quickly. And there are project groups, and I think I just called them project groups. Actually, did I not make any groups? All right.
And it's 1935.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to assign it, you guys. You can sign up yourself. And again, you can do it solo if you want. Let's see. Project groups plus group. I don't have to do this now. What do we want to call, if not project groups, let's just call it final project. I don't have to do this now. Allow self-sign up. I will create, there's 30 of you, so I'll create 10 groups. So now there are 10 final project groups, which you can sign up for when we get there. You do not have to do it as a group. So what happens if you don't have it as a group, then it's just an individual name at that point, right? So it's up to you if you want to join the group. I just thought it might be easier for you actually if you work together with people on the group. So the groups are optional, but working with somebody can make the whole thing a little bit easier. It also gives you an option to do a little bit more with GitHub because you can learn how to share and blend. Okay.
The project's basically just redoing everything.
Project is basically just redoing everything. Let's go back to assignments. One of the things that I'm trying to do, I don't know, you could tell me when we do evaluations. It may be a bad idea, but basically what I'm having you do is do this 3 times, right? We do it together in class. You have an assignment that is very parallel to what we're doing in class. And the project is basically doing something very similar. Now, if you want to add to it or make it a little bit different, you can, but I will accept it if it's pretty much just a clone with some other topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you get 3 shots at it. And after 3 shots, you may be comfortable with the basics. I still would urge you, if you're interested in this, to go off and play with it and figure out because you can make really sophisticated websites with this. I mean, you can make as sophisticated as any website out there, but that's going to take some learning. And what we're doing is not very sophisticated, but it gives you sort of the basics to build on. So, I mean, basically, it wants a model, so it needs to be database driven. You should have some views and templates, one at least for showing data and at least one detail. Forms, which we haven't covered yet, but we will. Authentication, log in, log out. When we do that, you will be amazed how easy it is if you use the defaults. So by default, it writes it to the database for you, creates your own user table, all of that. You literally can just drag and drop a couple of statements in and it's done. If you want to create a different authentication for yourself, then you've got a lot more work to do. But it can be done. With templates, just the HTML for everything, and in tests, right? Which is what we're going to talk about today. So that's all that's required. And then if you are totally blank on ideas, a music or movie review site to keep track of classes and assignments, a site that's for to-do, to create a to-do list and actions, a site to track diet and exercise. These are suggestions. You are not bound to any of them. But if you have a totally blank, which can happen late in the quarter, but if you draw, there's at least a couple of ideas there. So that's what we have left. Any other questions before I launch this and start talking about testing? I'm tempted to do this, but I think I will cancel it. Trouble is, does it open if I cancel it?
Yeah.
Yep, it did.
Been doing it every day for.
So if I think that's only for the Linux version of this. That makes sense? Because I haven't seen it on the Windows. Have you guys seen that?
See what?
That a message saying that it's this version's out of date and won't be updated anymore. Okay, so it's asking you to switch versions. Yeah.
I just have a tiny question. What's the difference between the path and the URL?
The which?
The path and the URL. Because I was seeing some.
Oh, so the version, the difference is version 1 something of Django or version 2 something of Django.
Okay.
So in the URLs, this particularly that book that I have that has the Django book, it uses URL here. So in the older form, there's a URL, and then the path statement is simpler, cleaner than the URL statement was. So both will work. You can still import the old URLs, but in the version 1 point whatever of Django, it always uses URL here, and after 2.0 it uses path here. That's the main difference.
So path is like the newer one.
Path is the newer one. Path is a little cleaner.
Okay.
URL is a little bit more complicated, and they a lot of times for complicated URLs you had to use regular expressions.
Yeah, I'm saying that was so confusing.
Yeah. And regular expressions are a pain. They're useful, but they're
Be a class.
yeah. So these are much nicer. They've simplified it even, they've simplified it more. But that actually is a good question because you will see the URLs online a lot for the early. Well, usually when you see that, it means they're using an earlier version of Django. Other questions? All right. So as I said, testing is a big part of any software development. And notice I didn't do anything. There was a test py put here automatically, right? And it imports test case. Just as a side, Python itself has a unit testing library just called unit test. The test case is specific to Django. But the tests don't look that different. So we'll do a couple, we'll create a test. Ideally, and I'm not going to do this because this would take forever, but ideally you should test every aspect of your code. So I'm going to write a class. These are all classes, kind of like the models were. And I'm going to test the model first. And I'm going to the model mostly because tech type and product. Okay. Because I name things differently and I need to remember what I named them. So I'm going to say tech type test. What you name the class doesn't really matter too much. I am going to put in here test case. So we've done this a little bit before with like model, but do you guys remember what is happening when I put something into the class parentheses? Just curious. It's inherited. So this class is inherited from test case. That means that it gets all of the public methods and attributes of that class, right? So it has those for free. I am going to, just for the first one, I'm just going to test the string. Remember in the class we have the toString method? So I'm just going to put a self there. With classes, you always have to have self in Python. For your methods, if you want to attach, self is what they do because they don't have anything like class level variables. It tells it that it belongs to the class. So you pass this through and we'll create methods down here that belong to the class. Does that make sense? Self is I consider that a really awkward way to do it, but that's how we do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this is just a variable. I'm going to say type equal, and I'm going to say tech type. Again, this is the name of the, oh, you know what's, this isn't going to work. You know why? Anybody have a guess? No,
Well, if we have to import model.
I need to import model. So we need tech type. And we're going to need product, right? And review. Those are the only models I had, right? So actually, you know, I import self into this, but I don't ever use self. Anyway, so I am going to say, and again, this has to match the model. So we're saying that the tech type name, I'm going to say tech type name equals, and I'm just going to say like laptop. It could be whatever. One of the things about tests is they don't actually use the database. All the data is local to the test. So I have to give it a tech type here. I'm defining a tech type. And then what I want to do is to say, is this what I'm going to say self assert equal that the string of tech type okay, so we're going to say that the string of tech type is going to be equal to, so I need a comma, type dot tech type name.
Is that a semicolon or a colon
Where
at the end of the lines for the test string?
this one is a colon, always a colon to define a method.
Oh, okay.
All right, so a couple of things about this. This is a real simple test. So the idea of the string method is that when you cast a object to string, it will return that string method, right? If it doesn't, if you don't write that __ string thing in the class, and we're testing the model, then it'll just return object one. So we're saying that the tech type name is laptop, and in our string method, so that's what it's going to return. So we're saying that when we put that class to string, will it return laptop, basically? Will it return the tech type name? And we're assigning that right here, right? That it's not reading the database, it's just looking right here to see that. We're asserting that these are equal. There are other assertions you can make. You can assert that it's not equal. You can assert that it's greater than. You can assert, there's about a dozen different asserts. And this is pretty typical. Even in C#, when you want to test something, you assert something is going to be something. So unit testing, it's pretty common that just to do assert. And then you know what you're asserting, that they're equal. If this is false, the test will fail. Does that make sense? The other thing that I need to mention is that these methods inside the class have to start with TEST. The underscore is optional, but I think it makes it clear. But it doesn't know that this is a test unless you start it with test. That isn't true of the class names. Class names can be whatever. But these can be whatever, but they need to start with test. I'm going to save this and we'll actually try to run this test. I'm not sure I'll run each one at a time, but we'll do it. Although in your case, I think I would, because debugging the tests when you have a dozen of them and they start getting errors can be a pain. So I'll save this. Down here, let me bring this up a little. I need to get the virtual machine running. And again, remember I did mine a little different in that I built it inside the virtual machine. It didn't help me, so it's not worth doing. But bin activate. And then I need to go back to tech review projects. Oh, I capitalized things, didn't I? Okay, now to run the test, I can do Python. Whoa, where did I just write Python? Python 3, manage Pi, test. I can also do, you don't have to do this, but I would recommend these two, that dash V2. Anybody have any idea what that means? It means run it verbose. Gives you more feedback. If you don't run the V2, it works, but this will give it with more feedback. So we've only got the one test, and the two is what level of verbosity do you want? There are different levels. So when I run this, I ran one test and it failed. Why did it fail? It doesn't equal laptop. Why doesn't it not equal laptop? What did you get? Did it work or did it?
Skipping setup of interviews. When zero test in 0 second. Okay. And nobody wanted me.
Well, so it runs with the verbose. It tells you all the stuff that it runs, all the migrations, and then it checks. It failed. Why did it fail?
I got the same as you.
What?
I got the same thing as you.
I said I can find no issues. No issues.
Well, I got no issues. It just said the test failed. You know what?
Oh, it didn't say that's true.
I got a bad module.
Oh, me?
No module named V and no module named 2.
Oh. Let me try. Actually, you did a dash V?
I did it. If I did so here, dash V2.
So it still doesn't equal laptop. Why doesn't it equal laptop?
Oh,
So there's a couple reasons why this could be. Let me look at my model. So I said tech type name. It's all lowercase. And that is my string.
Steve, I think it's, I was looking at the your blog, and
Yeah.
instead of saying tech type in assert equal, it should just be type, the variable that you
Oh,
said
you're right.
before.
You're right. Let's go back to tests. Tech.
Yeah.
And it should be the yes, because it's the variable that we're testing, right? Oh, it should be type.
Type, yeah. That's the variable you said on the before.
This is what we're testing. This is the instance. So I bet it works now.
Is there any extra package we need to
What?
install for the tests?
It shouldn't have to install
Because
anything.
mine is complaining about the assert equal.
So you did, do you have the import test case at the top?
You are, you say, safe, safe. You've got to save. You've got to save. Save the, what you type.
Never.
It shouldn't matter. Try it.
Well, so that actually does just, let's look at your thing again. Change this just to test again.
Right.
In the parentheses down here.
Even though it's my model.
It's not straight, right?
Right, but it's
Underscore, right?
the variable,
You've got.
and it should match
That's
the
being
case.
self.
All right, so still failed?
No. Oh.
You- testing.
Actually, let me try this. Did I run it again?
Save.
I didn't save. All right.
If I go into like a template.
So I'm going to do down here, I'm going to do clear to bring it back up to the top. Okay, this time it succeeded.
It worked.
Yeah, so you have the test equals okay.
Oh, you-
I will say, yeah, that when I do this, every time I run these tests, I have these kinds of problems. And it's because I'm a horrible typist, I think. Or like when I'm talking, I get, so type here, we're casting, you don't cast the parent class, right? You always cast the instance of the class. And it's the instance of a class that has the type name. Laptop. Excuse me. I have allergies today. My ears are plugged. So if I don't hear you. I love spring, but I'm allergic to everything. All right, so let's do one more test here on text. Tech type is pretty easy. But we'll test the meta for the table. And again, you should test everything, but I'm going to do D. So we create a method, and it should start with test. And I'm going to test table. We'll do the self.
Just take. No.
And there should be a colon there.
Just take.
All right, and then I'm going to just assert. So I'm going to assert equal. This is a little bit, so I'm going to do string, tech type. This time we do want the actual name. Dot underscore meta dot db table. And where do you find that? You have to look that up because that's, and then we're going to say that it's equal to tech type. And I'm pretty sure I did it, and it should be with quotes. I'm pretty sure I did it all lowercase. So really what we're checking here is that it actually has the table name correct that we set for the class.
So this is testing back against the,
No, it's still actually testing against the model.
oh, okay.
So it actually will fail. Oh, no, that's the plural. So it should succeed. And you could test for the plural if you wanted. You could test. So it's actually only testing against the.
But in this case, it is looking at the models, whatever that's called, models.py,
Right.
and checking that the meta table On the first one, where you're giving it a type name, laptop,
Right.
that's as if it was reading from the database the value of type top, is it?
Right. So what we're doing, we're actually sort of, at this point, we're just testing to see if it returns in the string function what it's supposed to. We're creating an instance of the tech type class that has this value. One of the nice things here is it's not forcing us to fill in all of the fields. When we do forms, we'll have to fill them all in.
Can you do multiple types there then, though, if you want?
You could, although it would get, I suppose you could do this test several times with different values.
I was thinking,
And you could test every field, like you could test the description field and things like that.
and so then what's it actually doing to test that?
It's looking at the model. And it's creating an instance, it's assigning that, and then it's using the toString function from the model. So I think it's running the model as a class.
So if, for instance, you had a limited length or something on the type name field and you put a value in there.
It
that was
should
longer
show an
than
error,
that of a length
Yeah,
and asserted not equal.
cert not equal or cert fail or something.
Yeah.
You could do that. And in fact, if we were being much more sophisticated, particularly with the product one, we could go through and test what happens when you enter a non-decimal, what happens when you do this, what happens. And actually that would be a really good idea, but it would take forever. Right? So you should probably go through and test every column basically, and any kinds of constraints and restrictions. And some of it seems sort of silly because it's already worked for us, but it's a good idea, and a lot of companies do want to see this test and want to see it come all the way through.
Well, the advantage is when you go and make changes to the program, you run your test, and boom, you find out right away.
Right away, if it failed or not, yeah. And at the very end, you should be doing this. We probably should have done them right after the very first, done the model test right after we created the models, done the view test right after we created the views. For each view, you add a test. For each thing you do, you add the tests that are appropriate to it, so that you're testing every step of the way. And then at the end, if all the tests pass, theoretically your program will work. And if they don't, it should locate where it's not working. Very easy.
And to point out, it'll work. It may not still work correctly because you may have program logic incorrect or something.
That's
like
true.
That. It's still
And if you test for the wrong value, it'll give you, and it returns the wrong value. But it at least means that there's no. It doesn't necessarily remove logical errors, although you might want to test for those too. Like, one of the things that I always say when you're testing like math, come up with an answer that you know is correct, that's simple, and see if it comes up correct. Don't do it with some bizarre thing and then where you really don't know if it's right or wrong. There are some really subtle errors that can occur, particularly from order of operations errors and things. Sometimes they're wildly off, and sometimes they're only subtly off. But those subtleties can cause problems. Other questions? As I said, I'm only kind of showing you how to test. In real life, you should do a much more extensive testing. All right, so are we ready for the next one? So we'll do this one with the, again, I imported it, so it's product. So I'm going to call it product test. And again, the name of the class doesn't matter. But we're going to import test case. A couple of other things. There's some variations of test case, which I'm not using. There's a thing called simple test case, which involves even less back and forth to the models and things, but generally we're going to do this. But it never does test the database, which would be, sometimes I think it would be good if it did. You can write SQL tests, I suppose. So I am going to, we'll do this string one again. So it could be, it would be a lot like, so I'm going to do test. I'm trying to think of what, oh, you know what I did for product? Let's do a setup first. And I'm actually going to do a capital U on that. Sometimes you have to set up some values. And the reason I did a capital U, I didn't do that in the thing, but when I looked at these before, I usually see it done this way. And I'm thinking it might actually look for that. You know, setup. I'm going to say type equals product type, or actually it's tech type for us. Tech type. And I'm going to again give it a, do you want a different type name? So tech type name equals, let's do tablet this time. Just because I don't want to capitalize it later. And then I'm also going to say that the, I'm just going to call it prod, I guess, equals product. And I'm going to give it a product name. Equals, I guess, iPad, since I'm doing tablet. And I'm going to give it a product type. Which is equal to type. And I'm going to give it a product price. So which will be about $800, I suppose. So what I did, let me kill this so that you can see the whole line. I've made a type object. You know why type? I should probably not name it type, but that's okay. It's green because it's somewhere it's a reserved word. But it's a tech type, and I gave it the type tablet. And here I created a product object, and I gave it a name, a type, and a price. Okay, so those are basically we're creating two objects in our setup so that we have something to test. Because again, it doesn't go back to the database. So we're doing these. And I think I need to make those both self. Well, I did it a different way, but okay. And then what I did, I'm not sure this is, you shouldn't have to do this. Let me try something. I did it a little different in the, let's just see if that works. If that fails, I'll go back to the way it was in the blog. So by saying that those are self, they should belong to the class, and they should be available anywhere in the class. So let's do a test string. Actually, let's make a space. So this will be a lot like the one above it, except I don't have to assign anything. I'm just going to do self assert equal that so I'm doing this differently than I have it typed out. So we're going to say that the string of the product is equal to self prod dot tech type. See if that works. Actually, that shouldn't be right. It should be the product name. Let's see if that works. It is possible to run one test at a time, but I'll run all of them. So I ran 3 tests. Unexpected word product type. Oh, it's probably not product type, it's probably tech type. No, it's not tech type test. I just need to look at the model. So it's called tech type. I just named it wrong in the test.
So on the product, the matter, the class matter is product, or is it under tech type, the matter?
Well, there's a meta under product and a meta under tech type. I'm not sure.
Is there like a difference, or can it compared to like requirements?
Yeah, it should see because we're in the product test one, it should see the product. But let's look at let's see if this works. I'm going to clear again to bring it up there. Still failed. Where did it fail? Oh, you know why? I didn't put self in front of type. So I'll go over these as soon as I've debugged it. Now they all ran. So I have 3 tests. Product test, tech type test, tech type. So all 3 ran. So where I failed before, first of all, this is tech type. I was following my script, which is for a different naming convention. And the other thing is I forgot to put the self in front of type. In Python, if something belongs to the class, if you do self dot, you always have to do self dot to say that it's a class level variable. Once I did self dot, it worked. The error before was that it didn't know what type was. So I have 3 tests that succeeded so far. And you can tell kind of that these are a pain. But you have to get everything right. Questions so far? We're going to do a couple more tests. I may not do all the tests that are even in the blog, but I'll show you sample tests of each kind.
But are they supposed to be ran from top to bottom?
Typically what you do, but as I said, in real life, probably what you would do is immediately after you added a view, you would write a test for that, couple of tests for that view, and then you would check those. And then, so what's probably unreal is to do a whole bunch of tests like this all at once, as opposed to just doing testing as you build.
Because
that
I'm
make
doing
sense?
something similar for Express, and if I run them all, Because one is for an add method, one is for the deleted, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, this will run all of them from top to bottom if you get them all. Yeah. So I said, I'm not going to necessarily do all of these tests, but we'll do a couple more. So we got the product. We've tested the string. There's a we could test the product. There's other things we could test. Like if I wanted to see that the product name was correct, I mean the type name was correct. So I'm going to do test type. So I'm going to do just a couple of little tests on this, and then we'll move on to testing views. So what I want to do is to assert equal. And what I'm going to do is to test that the product type is tablet for the product. So I can do string self-prod dot tech type. And what I want to say is that that will be tablet with a lowercase t because it has to match. This is a little different than what you might have because it's a little different than the blog. But I'm testing that the product, because the product has a tech type, which it gets from the other object, I want to return that, see if it actually returns tablet. Does that make sense? So you can test, we're seeing that the type for this product, for the iPad here, is tablet. It's way of showing it because we have two objects up here, type and product. And the type for product is the type above it. It's a foreign key, right? So let's see if this works. Should. So I'm going to clear down here. It ran 4 tests and they all worked, which means that it did return tablet for the type. Does that make sense? I'm going to do one other test on product, which you may or may not have. And then we'll do, I may skip the reviews and just go to the, and just look into, because the review I didn't do anything extra. There's another thing, I'm just going to look real quickly at the model. We did a extra method here which gives a member discount, right? In fact, we have 2 of them there, and if you want, we can test both of them. The discount gives you the amount of the discount, and the other one gives you the price after the discount. Does that make sense? So we could test those methods as well. And they're actually a little bit more interesting to test, perhaps. I may only do one of them, but so I am going to do so we'll do the test of the discount. Test discount self, and I am going to so we did the price is 800. Let's see what that, I'm not sure about the amount. So I'm going to self assert equal um, so I'm going to do product self.prod member discount, and then I have to say how much that's going to be. Oh, come on, where's the calculator? There it is. So we had $800 times 0.25, so $200 off? No, that's not right.
That's not
What?
That's no profit at all.
Well, that would be 8 times 25.
Well, let me look at, what did I say that,
Yeah, that's 200.
so 200. 500 was only, I just want to look at this again.
The discount was 5%.
It's 5%, not 25%. Okay, so, did I close the calculator? Shoot.
Oh, 5% of 800, that should be about $40.
Yes, 40.
Or
$40.
$40 makes sense. 200 didn't make sense.
Sign me up.
Yeah, 40. That's a good amount. So anyway, so what I need to say here is, back in the test, we want it to be equal to 40. Let's see if that assertion works.
Does it have to be on the price is equal to 40?
It have to be what?
Does it have to be discount is equal to 40?
No, that should be, that we're saying that these are equal, that what it returns from this method is going to be equal to this amount. So let's see. So it ran and it was okay. We have 5 tests now and it was okay. So, I mean, you can test all, if you have methods like that which are doing calculations and stuff, you can test them. It's a really good idea. I think kind of, 40 is an even number. It's a really good idea to have a price where it's pretty obvious what the answer is. So we could do the other one too, but is it clear here? Because I'm not sure if we need to do all of these, if the example is clear enough.
Can we just quickly do
What?
Can we quickly do them in Midterm with the with homework?
This is pretty close to the homework. I mean, so in fact, there's extras here that you wouldn't necessarily have to do in the homework. So we've tested the models. And generally all I'm asking you to do in the homework to test the models is like the string in the meta table. You can do more, you can test more if you want. It's actually kind of fun once you get them working. It's a bit of a pain to get them working, but it's kind of fun to get once they are working. And then you can go through, and so for each of the models, so we did tech type and product test. You could also do, I would also do review. You've got a couple more models than that. Most of you have like 4 or 5, right? So just go through and do at least the simplest tests. Make sure the toString works, And again, the idea is just to get you the idea of what it's like to write a test. I'm not asking you to test them real thoroughly because that could take a while. But let me make these are all tests for models. Now I want to do a couple of tests for views. And again, I'm not going to do them as thoroughly as they probably should be. So we'll try the test for index first. So I'm going to do class. And we will do index test. Not text, test. And again, still test case. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that it is the test that they have, or that, and I took this from a book test, but test that the URL, the view URL accessible. I'm doing what they do in the, if you look at the documentation, they write a whole sentence for the test. So what we're going to do, you know how in the URL there's a name, right? You get name equals. This is just testing that that actually works. So I'll do self. And I'm just going to do response. Equals self dot client dot get, and I might have to import reverse at the top. Reverse index, and that should be in quotes. And then I'm going to say, we're going to assert that it's equal. And again, not everything has to be equal. Response status code. So there are a bunch of different status codes, and I think in the pages at some point I have a link to them. 200 means everything's fine. Everything's good. So 200 means that everything's good. What it's going to do is it's going to go look for the web page by the name in the URL, and if it finds it, then everything is good. As I said, I might need to import reverse. Let's see. Reverse is not defined, so I haven't imported it. Where do you import it from? It should be in the GitHub. Yeah, where does reverse come from? Is it from URLs?
Django.urls.
That's what I thought.
Is what,
Just URLs?
Django.urls, yeah. Import reverse.
Import reverse. There it is.
But what is reverse?
So it's sort of like it goes to the page and then looks back. So can it from the template look back to the URL? It's hard to explain, but it's sort of, normally you go from the request to the view to the template. So it's sort of like looking for the template, looking back. That being said, so this is probably actually hitting these other files here to see if everything is where it says it is. So that's further down though. That's for the models. So I had to add the reverse. Let's see if it works now. So I have to save it again. And I'll do a clear to bring this up. Except not there. and it passed. It means it can find the web page by the name.
What do you fix to get that?
I had to add reverse at the top. So I had to do from Django URLs import reverse. Okay, so I'm going to do just a couple more of these. I mean, this is a pretty easy one to do because they're all going to look exactly like this, except you change the name. Right? So we did test case, get products. I'm going to try to do the one with the product ID. Remember the detail one? It's a little bit more complex. So if we look at the views, there's the one where we get the ID. So it's bringing in a couple of different variables. It's a little bit different than the others. I have a bunch of stuff here. I'm not sure I'll test each of those, although you could. Probably should, whether the review count gives you the actual review count, reviews, we can test those. The big key to doing this as a test, and this is true with a lot of different things, is you need to, so I'm going to do class I was just looking, I think these are all part of one thing, but let's do get products test. The trick is you have to set up a lot of sample data, again, because it's not reading the database. So I'm going to do def setup self, and we're going to set up a lot of different things. So a product needs, just looking this, we need a user for what we're doing. Oh, I was going to return how many reviews, and I didn't set up any reviews, but let's do self dot user. Oh, self dot u equal user. And I may have to add this at the top too. So I'm just going to do username equals my user, but I think I have to add auth. All right, from, is it Django auth config? It's config auth, the other way. Dot models, and then user. Okay. Because we need a user down here. So do you need a second there? Django config auth models user. We just, there are, eventually we're going to have lots of imports in all of these, but you have to import all of these. So we're importing the user, kind of like we did in our models in general, so that we'd have those.
Oh, and it's contrib.
Oh, it's contrib. Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a user, and then we're going to create a type. Self dot type equals tech type, and we'll give it a name. So we could do laptop again. No, it's tech type name. So what we're doing is setting up sample data for the tests. I'm also going to do a product.
So your example seems to be a little different.
It is probably. What did I have before?
Tech type or product type.
Yeah, so tech type is what I named it here.
Dot objects dot create.
So I probably should do that. Do I need to do that on the user too? Yes. Create. So I probably should do that on all of these. Product is a big one because we have to give it all of its fields, all of its required fields. So I'm going to do product name equals product one. Comma outside of the quote. Product type, except that it's not product name. Yeah, it is, but this would be tech type. Equals self dot type. If I break the line, will it kill?
It's a common,
Yeah, no, I just Python. I'm not sure. You might need to put a line break character of some sort. So we need the user equals self.u. What else do we need? Product entry date.
and product price.
Oh, we need price. Yeah. I'm hoping these are the right field names.
Your product price is
So we just need to give it a price. And then product entry date. Is that what I named it?
yeah. All one word.
Okay, and I think that's, I have product description too. I'm not sure I need that one, but I'll add it. This is a little different than what I entered before. So that's a long line. But basically what it did is we created a product. And so we gave it a name, product one. We gave it a type, which is laptop. We gave it a user, which is the user we created up here. We gave it a product price of $500. It might be good to put, I didn't in the thing, I don't think, but it might be good to put decimal so that it knows that it's a float, not an int. And then we gave it an entry date. Doesn't matter what date, but it does need to be formed as a date. And then product description, which I'm not sure we needed. But
You don't need the URL. What's the difference between just putting the name of the class and then putting like the name of the class dot object dot create?
I'm not sure. We could try it without, but I think I remember I had trouble with the persistence of these things. We could put the URL in there if you want. It is optional. I think it'll work without it. If it doesn't, we'll add it.
And you said it has to be all in one line?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. That could cause, Python is, because of its way it divides things, I'm not sure that works. It's safest to do it on one line, but I know there are ways to break lines.
I just broke the line in it.
It worked fine. Okay. So I'll break it a couple of times then, but it works fine. Okay, so that's the product. I also had reviews, but I don't know if I want to do that. I'm just looking to see what my tests were. So all the reviews I added in the blog, if you want to look at them, so that we could count the reviews. I don't know that I'm going to do that right now. It's not uncommon though for a test to have to set up a bunch of sample data, right? So this isn't a test yet. This is all just setup. So let's do, actually user equals self view. That doesn't necessarily look right. That's backwards. Well, oh no, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. My brain is gone. So let's do a test. We'll do a couple of little tests. So we'll do a def test. And we'll test the product detail first. So what I want to do is test that the product detail is successful. And what I'm going to do is we're going to say response equals self dot client dot get, and then I'm going to do reverse product details. Remember that in the product one, there's a link to product details, right? So what we're doing is we're testing that it's going to pass the ID properly. And then we're going to comma args, it's a built-in variable, equals self dot prod dot ID. And I have two assertions there, one of which works, I think, and one not. Oh, I just said assert that the self post is actually returned. Self dot assert equal response dot status code, and we're looking for 200 again. So what this is testing, it sounds really hard, particularly since we did all that other data, is that we are going to test that when you choose, when you do the link on it, that it will pass the ID. As I said, that's a lot of complicated stuff for just this. We might add some other stuff, I don't know. So let me clear down here. Oh, first I need to save. Yeah, that failed.
Oh, and four.
What?
Forgot the
Yeah,
email.
where I broke the line. You didn't have a problem? Was yours indented, Mark?
Yeah, I'm in Windows, maybe that's the difference.
Maybe. Oops.
Simply.
Same error. So maybe that wasn't the error.
No, mine is on this product detail.
Yeah, same.
What did I? Is it product detail? But that isn't where it failed.
Product details.
Get reverse product detail, I think is what mine was. Now, I had product details, but product one, tech type, it broke on user, self.u, product price. What? So it broke before user. Why?
The line 20, that line 44,
Yeah,
it goes in parentheses, should it be 2 or 3? The very last parenthesis there.
1, 2, 3, 1. So I got 3 open. So 1, 2, 1 is closed. 1, 1.
Oh,
Well, I think that's right.
ARGs is supposed to be product detail, comma, ARGs. You've got paren, comma,
Oh.
and then that paren needs to go at the end of your line.
This
So
is
it's on line 44.
1, 2, 3.
So that print should go away?
It should go at the end of the line.
One.
No, not.
Oh, this
so
one,
the
this one, that one.
Reverse, yeah, right. And then you need paren, one more paren.
Yeah, it should be 3.
Because I prematurely closed it. Still doesn't like it. Still user though is where it's claiming. Line 4, contrib auth models user. Yeah, I did the import.
Well, that's where it's saying that there is a maybe there's.
So,
Import user.
Import user. Thank you. And that was where the error was before, not the line break. As I told you, I have typing problems, particularly when I'm talking. Still failed. So this time, actually, all of them succeeded except the get products test. Test get products test error. Let's go to the bottom of that. Arguments after iterable. What is it not? So this is for line 44, product detail, args. What did I do with the args? That actually looks good. Product detail. Is product details what I named it, or product detail? Argument after asterisk must be iterable, not int, but that doesn't make sense to me. Test product detail success self, response self client get reverse, product detail args equals self prod ID. Self assert equal response. So what is it not like?
Oh, yeah.
It says line 44. I don't see any difference from what I did there. What is it not like? The other thing I will say, if you get so that most of your tests run and there's just one that doesn't or something, I will take it. But this should run. I don't understand why it's not running. It might be something up above. Error. What object would be an int that it's complaining about?
I have a problem with that one. Means if you say we need false.
So you sure it's not details versus?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's using the name. So if I look at my URLs, I did product detail.
What about your model?
Pretty sure the model is, well, there's no product detail in model. There's product.
Oh, so yeah.
Product detail. Actually, let's
Capital P.
maybe, if it's using the, let's try that. If it's using that instead of the name, that wasn't it. The same error. I'm not sure I want to spend the next few
Yeah,
minutes
according to
debugging.
your notes here though, your argument that you have from ID is a comma, does that make any difference?
You know, it might. I think that actually is the error.
ID and then comment.
Yeah, because this is, I think this is a tuple. And tuples have to have a list even if there's only one element.
Change your uppercase T back to lowercase.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so let's try that. Good eye, if that works.
Is it product detail or details, or does that even matter?
What?
I just
So it's
see
just-
us up mine, it works, but like.
ID,
Product detail.
ID has way.
Mine is product detail in the naming. It worked.
The
It was the comma.
bonus points.
Yeah, you should get a extra credit. It was the comma after this.
Wow. So could you explain that again? You said that.
This is, we're creating a tuple of, so theoretically, because it's args, it can have a whole list. It's basically thinking that there will be a list of arguments, which could be anywhere from 0 to infinity. And it requires a comma between elements, even if there's no element that follows.
Even if you had multiple elements.
If you had a multiple element, you don't have to have a comma after the last one, but if there's only one element, you have to have a comma, which seems to me just utterly insane, but it's a Python thing I've encountered more than once. When you have what they call a tuple is a type of listing. It has to have a comma. If there's only one object, it has to have a comma. And that just, it's bizarre.
So that's, it's internal, it's looking for that comma
It's
and then stopping processing.
And when it says it can't iterate, it's because it's only got one thing here and it's expecting, yeah.
Why doesn't it run out the last, or the last 2 tests?
Yeah.
5 seconds.
So, which the test up here too,
It stops and it has big index, that's those. You say we don't need it.
did you save your test?
The only ones that pop it up is thing.
What?
Oh. Use self dot updated use comma.
Oh, I know. Classes Yes. That's how Python tells what the groups are.
Oh, no, it hurts.
Yeah. What does it say about it?
Yeah, because we could.
We got into the bottom. That's a good book. And then it runs all the others, it's just there.
Earlier.
Now we have the connection.
Let's look at the model. We have. We go lower to
One location.
I would not worry about it. And we could try to figure out, I have no idea what it is, so I would find her. Well, clients are just seeing the lowest. I can't see something, yeah. Right, to get product.
Okay, let's go. Check it.
43.
Digital test.
Next one, test tables. Let's say,
Okay, test. Setup. Setup. SE uppercase D. And then you probably have to get all the setup. But I will let's go down through the list. Oh, you probably have one more setup. It's the setup.
Oh, look, it's fine. Yeah, if one error is
This
not
one's
working.
on the page. I don't know. You might have to type in.
All right, so I think that's all I have for the testing. I will post this. The blog is there, and there's also other examples of tests. If you get most of the tests working, I'm not going to worry if a couple fail. You can try to debug them. They can be a real pain to debug, as you can tell. It would have taken me forever to remember that comma. Now that we remembered it, I remember having that issue before.
That didn't fix it for me.
But, I mean, there's a lot of little stuff here that can, I just want you to get the feel for tests, yeah.
So in line 44 of the product details and quotes, what is that referencing?
In line 44. See if I can move this over. So what, the client get?
Yeah, well, product detail. Because for me, I had product details, and then it failed, but then when I took the S off, it worked.
It's using the name. So when you look at the URL, what did you name it? Does that make sense?
Oh. That's why, okay. I was wondering what that was referencing.
So yeah, it's referencing the name. partially because if you look at the view, well, actually not the view. Let's look at products HTML. We did a link to the detail here, URL product detail using the name. All right, so it's referring to that, which refers to the name. So it's the thing that it will drive you nuts, but by the time you do this 3 times, it may drive you a little less nuts, is that there are so many different places that it's referring to.
Yeah, it's hard to navigate that.
It takes a while, and I'm better at it than I used to, but I still sometimes get lost. So my only compensation is that most frameworks that I've looked at are just as complex. The goal is to separate out everything, right? So the URLs are only about the paths to the views. The views are only about the setting up the program, usually talking to the model and throwing it to the template. Templates are only the HTML. Models are only the models. I mean, the idea is to separate out all the functionality. If they break it down finer than you probably would if you're doing it on your own. And there's a little bit of overlap because, like, we do a little bit of programming in the templates too, right? We do the loops and stuff. So it's not pure, but it's trying to break it all up.
Into the Python portion of it, it looks like we just do like the test string and
Right. You can keep the tests fairly simple. I mean, if you want to expand on those tests, you can, but for the assignment, you do not have to do very elaborate tests. As I said, the goal is just to get you to know that testing exists, give you a little bit of a feel for it. And then, as I said, in a real life job, you'd probably have to do a lot of this. The thing that's a little unreal about this is that we were doing all these at once, and typically you would test as you build, right? So as you did models, you would test the models. As you did views, you would test each view. And so the tests would happen. You would write 1 or 2 or 3 at a time and not a whole pile of them at a time. So let me get out of here and kill the video. The other part I have to